We speak now to writer and director Vusi'Africa Sindane about the documentary. Wow, so many emotions. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Thank you, Mpo. Thank you, and thanks for having me here.
An emotional roller coaster, hey? The life of Happy Sindane. I know that you family, he's your cousin, and you just happen to be this hotshot director to produce this documentary. Talk to us now about how you came to actually documenting the story about Happy Sindane.
The story has been sitting with me for over 20 years, and when the story broke, I never imagined that I'll be the person to actually make the story into the documentary. And I think the most difficult thing was the fact that, everybody involved in it is my family, my uncles, babumkhulu, mamkhulu, they are all my family, the Sindanes raised me. I am a Sindane myself, So I was conflicted in making the documentary because there was personal bias, that I had to address because I was predisposed to certain facts, So I had to keep on, reminding myself that, I need to remain objective, I have to at all the times, take into account both sides of the story because more than anything else, as much as the documentary scrutinizes the role of the media, in using racial undertones to address Happy Sindane and to frame his story, which was, to my view and maybe to the view of others, was quite prejudiced, and one should account, to the fact that he was misrepresented. So as much as I wanted to address those issues, I had to still, speak to the likes of, Tracy Going, who was one of the journalists who broke the story, speak to the likes of Zola, who was one of the, media personalities who covered the story, and really get a sense, of what was going through their minds as they were covering the story, so that then, my approach to the story wouldn't be biased.
Yeah. And in fact, one would have assumed, just based on assumption, that telling the story would be easier for you because you've got information. But of course, having to find that perfect balance so that you tell it in a way that, brings in both sides and tells both sides, especially when you had to now deal with how the family's been affected. The family affected by this in a way they felt was so wrong to have him attacked and scrutinized the way he was within the social media space as well.
I think the most painful thing was that myself and Happy, we met each other, when I was looking to meet the Sindanes, because my father passed on in 1989, right? So I was raised by my mother, and Jacob Sindane, my father's older brother, introduced me to the Sindanes and then introduced me to Kos Sindane, the man who raised Happy Sindane. So that's how I met Happy Sindane. I met Happy Sindane because I was also looking for my family, and 2 years later the story broke. And because he was looking for his family, so there was that, conflict of interest, that kept on emerging because of the fact that, I also had questions, regarding the Sindanes, that I had to address, but more than anything else, I had to also remain true to Happy's story, because, as much as the Sindanes are my family and as much as I care about them, as much as I love them, there were certain issues that I had to remove myself from, like from the fact that Happy didn't go to school. I had to interrogate that issue. I had to understand why didn't Happy have access to education, and I came to the realization that actually Happy was bullied at school because he was different. Remember, he's growing up in Gwandebele. There's nobody who looks like him. Everybody he sees, is black. And when they address him, they call him plain boss, which means small boss or small white person, so those were derogative terms that were used to address Happy. And in other instances, the Sindanes are accomplices, and in ways that they were not aware of, because of the fact that, they raised him in a special way. Like, for instance, Happy had his own fridge at home.
Oh, why was that?
Because they felt like, Happy's special, he shouldn't, nobody should touch Happy's things. So Happy had his own fridge at home growing up, So that added him, as much as they were trying to treat him special, it added him. It made him feel as if, he's the other person. So there were some of those issues, that I had to remove my personal bias from and really address from a perspective of a filmmaker,
So he was treated differently in a way that was seemingly special.
Yes.
But he still felt like he didn't belong.
Yes.
And that was what really grabbed the media, because he looked different and he felt like he didn't belong to the Sindanes and he was kidnapped. So how did you navigate around that topic about who he is, why he looked different, and what that actual story was? So
the truth of the matter is that, Happy was born in the 80s, right? He was born in 1984. And what we know about the 80s is that there were rules that governed relationships. Like, for instance, the Populations Act, which determined where people could live. Like the Mixed Marriages Act, which forbidden people to get married to mixed races, right? So there were those rules that prevented Happy's mother and Happy's father to have an open relationship. So Happy was born a crime, as Trevor Noah would say. So because of that, he couldn't have a normal life from birth because he was an illegal child. So that meant that he had to be displaced, right? He had to live with his mother. So, but because his mother at the time, she was a domestic worker, and chances are Happy was a child of an affair, because we do not get much facts about Happy's father, because he is white. And because he is white, the media frames him differently. There's not much research done about him because he's framed differently. And that's some of the things that, the story addresses, how the media frames white people and how the media frames, black people, in that respect. So what we discovered is that Happy Sindane actually spent some time in the Eastern Cape between the year 87 and the year 89 to 91. And his time in the Eastern Cape was also very difficult, because the children he was growing up with in the Eastern Cape didn't see him as one of them. He was not fed enough, and he didn't receive the neighborly love that all the kids were exposed to.
Just very quickly, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut our conversation very abruptly, but yeah, the details. When can we see this documentary, Fascinating Story of Happy Sindane?
Okay, we are showing on the 25th of November at Cinema Novo, and at 12:45. All right. So this is part of my Masters in Fine Arts program at AFDA, and I'm also showing on the 26th at Stekiniko in Rosebank also as the closing film for the Africa Rising Film International Festival. Yes.
Okay, absolutely brilliant. We're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for coming in studio and talking to us about Happy, the true story of Happy Sindane. There, speaking to film writer and director Vusi'Africa Sindane about this, of course, a fascinating story.